YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. In today's video, I have my NFL draft class ranking. So we're taking all 32 teams, ranking them from worst to first, in my opinion. We graded all the teams division by division. I kind of went in depth about each team's draft class. So if you haven't seen those for your team, go ahead and check them out. This is more just the ranking from worst to first here. So this should be a fun one. I'll probably get bashed in the comments. Can't wait. Subscriber goals at 20K. We're getting there. Thanks to the support out there. You guys have been awesome. Clicking that like button, much appreciated as well. And there's our Twitter in the bottom right. Also a link in the description. Let's start with number 32. And I'm sorry to the Falcons fans, but I gave them last in terms of their draft class this year. But I don't think these guys will be bad. I'm not saying these are bad players. They're obviously good players. I make my board and my position rankings, as a lot of you saw, before the draft. Obviously, I don't change them after. People want me to change things just because how teams went about their draft. I'm not changing that. So, they beefed up the offensive line. I like that. They didn't really go for that D tackle position, which we thought they would. I don't really hurt teams too much. I don't have them take a hit too much if they don't fill a need, because I'm all about best available. But I keep going back to, if I would have made a mock draft, really just mocking Lindstrom to the Falcons at 14, I would have got ripped by Falcons fan. Would have happened. And then what if I would have done it with them trading back in and getting Lindstrom and McGarry? It would have been the end of the world. So I kind of look at it like that. They were both, Lindstrom was in the 30s on my big board. Caleb McGarry was, 40s, reaching almost 50. So interesting, but I like the Falcons team. They just got to stay healthy. Sheffield was a little bit of a reach. Kaminsky's a sleeper. Wasn't super high in him, though. Olsen was, a bit of a reach. Shore Miller I like. Marcus Green was a reach. So, that kind of sums up why they were 32nd. 31, I gave it to the Texans. Again, they got some good football players, but just looking at my board, I love the Charles Omenihu pick. That was a steal. He was in the top 40 on my big board, so that was an absolute steal. I think he fits. It's a great fit, 3-4 defensive end. Titus Howard, I like Howard. A little bit of a project, but I like him a lot. A little bit of a reach, not a big deal. Lonnie Johnson will help them at corner. Max Sharping, I think a bit of a reach. Kahali Waring, a little bit of a reach, but can play tight end at a solid level. Crawford, that's about where he should go, and they get the A&M fullback in the 7th round. Didn't have a grade on him. So, not a terrible class at all, but some reaches, nothing that's wow besides Charles Omenihu. So they find themselves at 31 on my rankings for 2019 draft. 30 is going to be the Niners. Didn't hate their class. I just didn't really like it that much. Bosa was the obvious pick. No tremendous value there, but they get a good player and an obvious fit. Deebo Samuel, pretty much the same situation. I really like Deebo Samuel. About where he should have went, though. Jalen Hurd, a little early, but I do like his upside. The punter in the 4th round killed it for me. It really did. And then Dre Greenlaw, I thought he would go undrafted, maybe 7th round. And there's some really good linebackers on the board at that time. Combining that with the punter, it's hurting. It's hurting a little bit. Caden Smith, about where he should go. Justin School, maybe a little early, no big deal. Tim Harris, I like that pick. So, yeah, they get the 30th rank. Not a bad class. They get good players. It's just looking at my board, how much value do they get? Who did they reach on? That's how I make these rankings. So it's kind of a set thing. I don't really just come up with it after the fact. 29, I gave it to the Giants. Very strange draft. Some picks I really, really like Dexter Lawrence, like Julian Love. And then I'm pretty high on the O'Shane Ximines, not as much as the other two I just named. And then there's picks that are decent. Baker, they did trade up for him. Chris Slayton's decent. The rest of them, to me, were reaches. So kind of back and forth on this one. They got some good players, but they had some big reaches, and that kind of what keeps them down here at 29. You got to start splitting hairs with some of these teams because they're so close, in a grade, I guess, in just draft class. So then number 28 is going to be the Cowboys. I think a reach with their first pick, Tristan Hill. He could have a better pro career than he did college. McGovern, they got about where he should go. Pollard, maybe a little early, but he's a weapon. Mike Jackson, good pick. No crazy value. Joe Jackson was their value pick. Donovan Wilson, I'm not a huge fan of. They take him in the 6th, had him undrafted. Mike Weber, they had a good 7th round. Mike Weber and Jalen Jelks, good 7th round. So a solid draft class, but they're down at 28 because they're just better draft classes. Couple reaches here and there. Nothing that makes you Just absolutely just love the draft class. Joe Jackson's solid. 27 is going to be the Eagles. So we got a lot of NFC East teams here in a row. The Eagles, I like the Andre Dillard pick. Maybe a little more than like it. But the Miles Sanders pick, in terms of running back value, and then Sanders having his fumbling problem, but he is a good back when he doesn't fumble. I thought a little early for him. I was more comfortable in the third or fourth range. I know pretty much everyone else loved Miles Sanders. There's some risk. He's definitely a good back when he doesn't fumble, but because of the fumbles, there's 5 in the 1 year starting. There's some risk. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, about where he should go. Sharif Miller, around early. And Clayton Thorson, even though I think around early. So some reaches, some players I like for them. Not a whole bunch of picks there. So they get 27th in this video. 26, the Raiders. They got some good football players. Raiders got some good football players, but nothing that's going to make you just, absolutely love it. The reason you could love this class is because they got a bunch of guys that can help them right away. But there's nothing like crazy, like, wow, how'd we get that guy? How'd they get that guy, And there's some reaches. Cleveland Farrell, I like for their defense. I like him as a football player. He's going to be a good football player. He's going to get to the quarterback, but it was a little bit of a reach. Other ones, Jonathan Abram, he's a heck of a football player. A little early, not crazy, a little early for me. Max Crosby, I liked him as a sleeper. I'm not sure about the fit yet. I don't think he'll be ready right away. A little early. I like the Foster Moreau pick. Hunter Renfrow, there was some other receivers I think make a bigger impact right away. Quentin Bell did not have a grade on him. So it kind of sums it up there. Solid draft, nothing crazy. They're at 26. So even though there's a big number on these ranks for some of these teams, I still like their draft, If a guy's picked early, it doesn't mean I think he's bad. Hopefully that's clear. The Bears were at 25. A lot of people like this class. I guess for them being a complete team, it's pretty solid because they didn't have a bunch of needs. David Montgomery, it's about where he should have went. Riley Ridley was that's a pick to get pumped about because he was not supposed to be there. A receiver wasn't a big need, but I respect them staying true to their board. But then the rest of the group, I didn't have a grade on Shelley. He'll compete for that nickel spots. Kareth White thought would be 7th undrafted, but he'll compete with David Montgomery, with Mike Davis, and then Cohen's more of a, that receiving back that can put him in the slot, only gets about 6 carries a game going off last year. We don't know what they're going to do this year. And then Denmark's just like a project. Everyone drafts a guy they want to, it's fun. It's a project guy that has a lot of upside. That's Denmark, but it's going to be a project. He's not going to get in the field. The one thing I don't like about this class is, not a whole bunch of guys I was super high on besides really Ridley and Montgomery went where he was at. But what I really don't like about this class is in 5 picks, they drafted 3 positions. I thought they could have, again, I'm not all about going for need, but I think there was spots here they could have went for a pass. I think they needed depth at the pass rush position. They have Khalil Mack, Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd going to be, they picked up his option, but his contract's coming to an end. I thought they could have got another pass rusher. But the good thing is they didn't have a bunch of needs. They got players that can help them instantly in Montgomery and Ridley. 24 is going to be the Dolphins. I kind of a little bit factor in the Rosen trade because it was in the draft. They also gained a next year second out of it. So I count that a little bit. I don't like counting like player trades unless they're in the draft. Christian Wilkins, like that pick. Michael Dieter, solid pick there in the 3rd. Van Ginkel was a reach. Isaiah Prince was a solid pick. Chandler Cox, the fullback from Auburn, didn't have a grade on him. And Myles Gaskin, I'm okay with him in the 7th. So nothing crazy here. I like Wilkins. The Prince pick is pretty good. Trading for Rosen. Just nothing crazy about this class. So I put them at 24. 23 is going to be the Seahawks. A long list of players that can help them right away. Collier, I don't count it as a reach, really. It was a little bit early, but I like the fit. Marquise Blair, to me, was a reach. Not a true safety. He can play in the box. He can still help the team. So kind of wondering what they're going to do with him. DK Metcalf, I love the pick. Some of these teams are pretty similar, but I think the DK Metcalf one steal kind of put them over the ones that I just revealed that I think are pretty close in grade. Cody Barton, maybe a little early. Jennings, it's an okay pick. Haynes, a solid pick. Amadi, maybe a little early. Ben Burr-Kirven, I like that pick. Homer, they're pretty much the rest of the way. Homer, Christmas, Ursua, about where they should go. So there's guys that can definitely help them right away. They got a Hall. DK Metcalf pick is really what kind of keeps them over because like I was talking about, the teams I just revealed, similar in grade, but they didn't have that jump out of your seat. Wow, we actually got this guy there the Seahawks did in DK Metcalf. So that was the difference maker. The Bucs are at 22. I got some good football players. I didn't really like how they focused on corner a lot in 2-3. They did that last year. I thought they needed a safety more, which they did get their guy in Mike Edwards. Thought they could have used a right tackle for the future as well. But again, I don't, take a hit on teams for not going need, but did not like the kicker in the 5th. I'm not drafting a kicker and punter. That's just me. Maybe you take the best kicker in the draft, which they did get, but it's in the 7th round. If he's not there, some people will say, well, he wouldn't have been there. I'd take my chances on undrafted guys there. It's just history shown that drafting these guys hasn't really worked out. So I'd rather get, because there's a lot of really good players on the board still at this point. So I'd rather do that. So a couple picks that were a little, reaching a little bit. There's some really good players on here, like Devin White, like Sean Bunting, Mike Edwards, Terry Beckner's a good 7th round pick. So that's who I put at 22. At 21, I got the Packers. Honestly, I didn't like the Packers' first round. I like Rashawn Gary. I'm just very concerned about the pick, or the fit, in the 3-4. I think he's just strictly a 4-3 end, so we'll see. Darnell Savage, I thought would go early 2nd. I had a 2nd round grade on him. And then trading up, I know there's a lot of Packers fans, they're saying that the Packers think he wouldn't have, well, obviously the Packers GM didn't think he would be there, but that's why they traded up. But it doesn't really change where I have him on my board. I can't really change that now. So I think he's a good football player, super athletic. A little early, didn't really like the trade up. The rest of the way, I pretty much liked it. Elgin Jenkins, Jay Sternberger, these are good picks. Kingsley Keke fits at 3-4 end. Holloman, I did not have a grade on him, so a little early on there. Dexter Williams, I love that pick. Ty Summers, solid pick there too. So they're kind of split. The first round I did not like. The rest of the way, I liked. So like the first round, it's looking like it's putting them at the end, and in the rest of the way, it's kind of putting them up higher, maybe in the teens, so it kind of split it a little bit. I value the whole draft equally, so it did give them a pretty good bump up the rest of the way at 21. So I do like the draft, even if it's at 21. 20 is the Lions. They get their tight end Hawkinson in the first. A little bit of a reach for Tyvay. I like Will Harris. I like Austin Bryant. Aruarie was a steal at round 5. Fulgham, that's about where he should go. There's some good receivers on the board. Ty Johnson was a little bit of reach for me, but pretty much like it the rest of the way. So, the Tyvay and then Ty Johnson, a little bit of a reach, but they got some really good players there with the other picks. I put them at 20. At 19 is the Steelers. Pretty similar draft. Devin Bush was an excellent pick there. I pretty much like it the whole way, except for the 5th and 6th rounds. Zach Gentry was early for me. Sutton Smith was early, but they get pretty much a steal in Isaiah Buggs there in the 6th round. So it's kind of back and forth there. They got some really good players, but had some reaches there. So I put them at 19. At 18, I got the Colts. Pretty good haul. Nothing at all really that makes you say wow, like how'd they get that guy. The only wow thing is they got a bunch of guys that can contribute right away, a bunch of 2nd rounders, a 3rd there too. So I like Ruckuson. Benogu is a little early. Paris Campbell, I really like that pick. Okereke can make an impact, but somewhat early. Kahari Willis, a little early. I like the Marvell Tell pick. EJ Speed, I did not have a grade on. The rest of the way was pretty solid. So they got guys that can contribute right away, some good football players, but then there's a couple reaches here and there. At 17, I got the Jags. Now, the Jags looking like an ape. They looking like number one clear cut after Josh Allen, after Juwan Taylor, who was my number 6 player in the draft. They get him in the 2nd round. And then Josh Oliver, who maybe it was a little early, but I do like Josh Oliver a lot. I love the fit, too. So they filled needs, and they got best available pretty much. So through 3 rounds, through their first 3rd rounder, it's an A+ draft. This might be the number 1 draft, but I value the whole draft equally. Quincy Williams, I had as an undrafted guy. Raquel Armstead, a little bit of a reach. I wasn't a huge fan of his, but not too much of a reach. Gardner Minshew, maybe a round too early. Dontavius Russell was a solid pick. So kind of splitting the difference there. They kind of drop after their first 3 picks. So that's unfortunate, but they got some instant playmakers that can help them this year, and that's impressive there. Number 16, I got the Jets. They get my number 1 overall player in Quinn Williams. They get a guy who I actually had a 1st round grade on, Ja'Kai Polite, in the 3rd round, so that's a steal. Edoga in the 3rd as well. That's about where he should go. So at this point, it's looking like a top-tier draft. It's an A+ draft. Trevon Wesco, I think, was a big reach. I thought was more of a 7th round guy. Cashman, somewhat of a steal there. won't make a big impact right away for them. And then Blashawn Austin, I thought was more of a 7th-round guy. So kind of back and forth there. So I put them at 16. It's still a very good draft. We're starting to get into there's some teams that absolutely killed it. I didn't expect to have so many top-tier drafts. So the Jets did a very good job there. 15, the Chargers. One other thing about the Jets, wish they would have grabbed a receiver somewhere, but a little bit of a hit for teams not getting something I think they need. But not crazy. Also, corner. I thought they could have went corner much, much earlier. They might be in trouble with their corners this year. 15 is the Chargers. Jerry Tillery, I like that pick. No crazy value, though. Nasir Adderley, like that pick, but no crazy value about where he should have went for me. My board. Trey Pipkins was a little early, but they needed a tackle. Drew Tranquil, I like that pick there in the 4th round. Easton Stick, another one, a little early. Amik Egbule, I like that pick in the 6th. Thought he could have went in the 5th. And then pretty much the same thing with Cortez Broughton. I think he has upside, could have went around earlier. So some picks I just really like. Nothing I want to go crazy about besides maybe... I do really like the Tranquil. I like the 6th and 7th. And some early picks there. They didn't have too many needs. I think they went out and filled their needs. I think they could use another corner, but I like this draft. I really like the fits. You see a lot of fits here. Looking at Nasir Adderley right next to Derwin James, and Drew Tranquil is a Chargers linebacker to me. So I like the fits, and that's kind of what puts them at 15. 14 is the Browns. This is another team that started off as an A+, about halfway through. Greedy Williams, an A++ pick. Sion Taki. I think a little early, but this one's really growing on me. I think it's a great fit. He'll be used as a weapon there at outside linebacker. Can do multiple different things. So maybe a little early looking at my board, but I love the fit. I love the potential of his. Sheldrick Redwine, it's a good pick in the 4th round, something they needed. Mac Wilson's an absolute steal in the 5th round. So we're looking at like an A+, maybe an A draft at this point, but then not a huge fan of the rest of the way. Austin Siebert, and then you got Drew Forbes. So the kicker in the 5th, not a huge fan of that. Drew Forbes, undrafted guy for me. Donnie Lewis, another undrafted guy for me. So most of their draft was better compared to the bad part, so that's why they're at 14. So some really good picks there at the top, and that kind of keeps them up and then from falling more. 13 is going to be the Chiefs for me. Nothing that makes you go, wow, how'd they get that guy? But a lot of really good players. Mecole Hardman, in their 2nd-round pick. They had 2 second-round picks. They get Hardman there to replace Tyreek Hill. It's about where I thought he should go, but it's a perfect fit for replacing Tyreek Hill. Not going to be as good as him. Juan Thornhill, I really like this pick. This is my favorite pick of theirs. This is the guy they needed. He can play strong safety. He can play corner for them. Heck of an athlete. I really like this pick for them. Kalen Saunders, I really like this pick too. Nothing crazy once again, but I really like it. Rashad Fenton, solid pick down here. Pretty much the rest of the way, they're solid picks, nothing crazy. So that gets them to 13. No reaches at all. I love that, but no crazy steals. Probably could have used a corner earlier, but they could use Thornhill at corner if they absolutely need him there. So I overall, I like this draft. We're getting to the ones I really, really like here. And the top 8 are the ones that are pretty much next level. We kind of, as soon as we got to like the top 17, 16 range, I really, really like. But then the top 8 is next level. Number 12 is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. They had the most picks in the draft, so I guess that's always good. They get a lot of good players that help them right away. Garrett Bradbury is a key piece in that new Kubiak offensive line. He'll play center. Irv Smith will be a weapon. They'll use him in the slot. They'll use him at tight end. They already have a couple tight ends, but they're going to use him in the slot a lot because they kind of needed that other receiver/tight end guy, so I like that a lot. Alexander Madison will replace Latavius Murray, so I guess that was probably the closest running back to that type of running back. So I do. Madison was one of my sleepers. I like him. Drew Samaya, I think they possibly got a starter here in the 4th round. He'll battle it out with Josh Klein and Pat Elflein, but Elflein's moving from center to guard, so Samaya could actually start. Cameron Smith in the 5th, decent pick there. Armon Watts was a good pick in the 6th. Added the rotation of D lineman. Marcus Epps was really my only reach for them. Had undrafted. Ali Udo from Elon, offensive tackle, I think can make his way on the field early in his career. Eventually, they're set at tackle. Eventually, I think you replace Riley Reif once he starts to, age a little bit or, contracts up. Chris Boyd is a Mike Zimmer corner. And, I thought he would go 4th or 5th round, so that was a steal there. Dylan Mitchell, I thought would go 5th round, and that's a kind of a Stephon Diggs, poor man Stephon Diggs type, so I like him down there a lot. Olabisi Johnson. Solid pick, and they take a long snapper in the 7th round. So maybe a little bit of reach there, but it's their last pick. So they got a haul, is what when they got, and they filled needs and they got a haul. So it was a solid draft for the Vikings. Number 11 is gonna be the Bills. Very good draft for the Bills. You know, it's hard to see them at 11. There's just some really good drafts. Ed Oliver was a great pick. Kind of expected him to be there, so nothing crazy about that one. But it's a great player. Cody Ford, there's a crazy one. There's something crazy about that one. How is this guy there in the 2nd round? Devin Singletary, I thought they took a little early. He's a weapon, but lacks long speed and doesn't really hit the hole that well and wants to bounce everything out. So I'm not super in love with that pick. Dawson Knox, I like that pick. Vashawn Joseph, solid pick. Jaquan Johnson, that's a solid pick in the 6th. Daryl Johnson had undrafted for him. Tommy Sweeney, about where he should go, solid blocking tight end. So they get some really good guys at the top mixed in with some guys that I'm not, they're not bad picks, but I'm not super in love with. But really getting Ed Oliver, Cody Ford, Dawson Knox in the 3rd. And then I do like Jaquan Johnson and Tommy Sweeney. So that is what kind of keeps them up. But since they're so close with the teams I just rattled off right below them, really the slight bump is because of Cody Ford, really. Got to split hairs with some of these teams that are so close. Number 10 is going to be the Cardinals. Very good draft for number 10, best draft. They get Kyler Murray. Nothing crazy about that one because we expected it and because he was kind of in the teens on my board. And then Byron Murphy. To me, people are wowed by this one. That's where I had him. So I had him around that range. So nothing crazy. Andy Isabella. I thought they took a round early, but it was late 2nd. So at this point, it's not a super crazy good draft for me. And keep going on. Actually, Zach Allen, I wasn't a huge fan of Zach Allen. I thought they took him around early. So through 4 picks, I'm not crazy about the draft. They got really good players in Kyler Murray and Byron Murphy, but then they absolutely steal Akeem Butler. They absolutely steal Deontay Thompson. Keyshawn Johnson's a great 6th-round pick. Lamont Gaylord is an excellent 6th-round pick. Thought he could have went 4. Joshua Miles that's about where he should go. It's a good 7th-round pick. I love the fit of Michael Dogby in the 7th. Thought he could have went 6. I'm glad he went to a 3-4 where he can play 3-4 end. Watch out for him playing more than Zach Allen. Maybe they'll force Zach Allen, but I think Dogby could be better early on in his career. Allen, when he puts on some strength, he looks like he has strength, but doesn't have as much as it looks. Once he gets that, he'll be better. Caleb Wilson's solid 7th-round pick. So from round 4 through 7, which is majority of their draft, they absolutely killed it. But not that their first 4 picks were bad, but it kind of brings them down to 10, which is still very good. On to number 9, we got the Patriots. Really like the Patriots draft. Got a good haul. N'Keal Harry, one of my favorite picks in the entire draft. Juwan Williams, like that pick. Winovich, solid pick there. Damian Harris, a little confused by that one, but they get a good player. Yanni Kajus was a great pick. Froholt, solid pick in the 4th. Stidham, love that pick. Kind of had that fit the whole way during his process. Byron Cowart, a little early, but he's got some upside being a former number 1 recruit. Jake Bailey, the punter in the 5th kind of hurt me a little bit. They kind of take a hit there. And Ken Webster is a solid pick. So it's a very solid draft. Really, to me, nothing that wows besides N'Keal Harry and maybe Yanni Kajus, but he had the injuries. So, and then Stidham doesn't really wow me because I kind of expected that, but it's a great pick. And then, guys like Cowart a round early and Jake Bailey, I wouldn't have drafted a punter. So again, very, very good draft class, but you got to separate them from the top tier here because it's a couple reaches, just a little bit of reaches and no crazy steals. Now we're on to I'll call it the Elite 8 because I had 8 teams that really just killed it, absolutely killed it. So it happened to be 8. So we'll call it the Elite 8. Number 8 is going to be the Saints. They only had 5 picks, but they still dominated this draft. Eric McCoy, that's about where he should go, but I love the fit there. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson thought was a 2nd-round guy. Wouldn't have been, out of my seat if they got him early 3rd, but they get him early 4th. Love that pick. Saquon Hampton, it's a very solid pick in the 6th. Alizé Mack, I thought was a 4th-round do-it-all tight end, at possible every down tight end. They get him in the 7th. Love the fit there. Caden Ellis is a solid 7th-round pick there. Could do multiple things. So no reaches, a couple picks like Chauncey Gardner and Alizé Mack that make you, wow, how'd they get that guy there? No reaches, I mentioned that. So, and they got their needs, and they have a whole bunch of them. Them having 5 picks, it's kind of confusing how they had a better draft, got more impact guys than teams that had, maybe almost double the picks. So they're at number 8, and they make that Elite 8, I guess. 7 is the Broncos. The Broncos did a hell of a job here. Not crazy about Fant, but they traded back, gained some picks, and they were able to do some other things because of that. So that's a solid pick. Dalton Risner is a great pick in the second round. Drew Lock, was my number 2 quarterback. Drew Lock was a lock in the first round. They get him in the second. That's an excellent pick. Draymond Jones could have went in the second. They had him in the third. Another great pick. Justin Hollins, about where he should go. I like him, getting added to that defense. Juwan Winfrey was the one that was a little bit of a reach. He has some upside. He was hurt this year. But the rest of the draft, there's some big-time picks, some big-time steals. Like, how did they get that guy? Looking at Risner, Locke, and then Jones, somewhat of a steal. Keeps them up, brings them up to 7. The Broncos did a great job. Number 6 going to be the Bengals. They got a haul, and they got a lot of guys I like. Jonah Williams, love that pick there. Not like crazy, but I like it. Drew Sample was pretty much a big-time reach, but they made up for it with the whole rest of the draft, the Jonah Williams and on. So that was a reach. But Jermaine Pratt was really my guy of the draft, my sleeper. I had an early second-round grade on him. He has so much upside. Love that pick in the third round. Ryan Finley was my number 5 quarterback. I really liked that pick in the fourth round. Wren, I thought could have went second or third. They get him in the fourth. Love that pick. Michael Jordan, it's a solid pick there. Nothing crazy about that one. But then they get another just absolute steal of a pick. My number 3 running back, actually, in Travion Williams in the 6th round. This guy's a weapon. Love that pick. Deshaun Davis, solid pick. He's a tackling machine. Rodney Anderson would have been a top 3 running back. He probably would have been number 3 right ahead of Travion Williams if he wasn't constantly hurt. So adding him to mix in with Joe Mixon and Travion Williams and limit his carries, and he probably can go off on some of those carries, that would be real good. And then Jordan Brown could have went in the 6th. They get him to 7. So they get a haul. They get a bunch of really good players that can help instantly. Just the only thing was Drew Sample, but everything else brings it up to number 6. But I guess you can say the Drew Sample pick is what kind of keeps them down for these top 5. Number 5 is going to be the Rams. No first-round pick, and they still kill it. We'll list these guys off here. In my top 100, keep in mind, the Rams did not have a first-round pick. Taylor Rapp, Darrell Henderson, David Long, and David Edwards. They got 4 players in my top 100 players without a first-round pick. So very impressive. Taylor Rapp was my number 1 safety. They get him in the 2nd. Darrell Henderson, love that pick there. He's my number 2 running back. David Long, about where he should have went. Bobby Evans, about where he should have went. Greg Gaines, about where he should have went, but a guy that fits, I think, can make an impact right away. David Edwards was an absolute steal. Nick Scott, a little bit of a reach there, but it was in the 7th round. And Dakota Allen's a solid pick in the 7th. So, crazy picks to me, like great picks, great, like, wow, how did they get that guy? Taylor Rapp and David Edwards. Darrell Henderson's kind of like borderline on that, but I love that pick. And then one reach. They did a hell of a job for not having a first-round pick. So good job to the Rams. Number 4 is going to be the Panthers. The Panthers filled a bunch. Here's the bad news. Evaluated the Panthers before making my mocks and 7-round mocks. They had a bunch of holes, maybe more holes than anybody in the league, and that was surprising because we have a team that was just in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Very solid team. If they didn't, have that down the stretch, they were kind of, rough a little bit, but they're switching to a 3-4, which makes sense because their D-line is built for the 3-4. And then Brian Burns fits a 3-4. There wasn't too many 3-4 outside linebackers that really strictly fit that. And then Brian Burns and Christian Miller really, really fit that. So they managed to get 2 of those guys. Brian Burns, a first-round grade from top 10 player for me. Christian Miller was a second-round player for me. They get him in the 4th round. Greg Little, it's a good fit. I had a second-round grade on it with him. Will Greer, solid in the 3rd. Jordan Scarlett. This is where I thought he would go. And this is where I had him graded because of off-the-field issues. But in terms of talent, he's a second-round talent, and I think a great pair with Christian McCaffrey. But he's got to stay out of trouble there, and it kind of, in different cases, kind of happened for him. So interesting. Dennis Daly is a very solid pick in the 6th. Thought he could have went 5th. So again, they're retooling that offensive line. And Terry Godwin's a very solid 7th-round pick. If I had to say something negative, they could have got a defensive back in here somewhere, and they could have got a receiver earlier. But that would have taken away from these great picks they got, like Christian Miller, all the other picks. So I really like this. They fill a lot of needs. They got some steals. They got some really good players, and they didn't have a single reach on top of it. So they're number 4. Number 3 to me is the Tennessee Titans. Not a whole bunch of picks. They had 6 picks. But again, another team with no reach. Jeffrey Simmons is a top 5 player when healthy, but he is hurt, so I don't really give them an A+ for that one, but it's a great pick. A.J. Brown is in just absolute steal. I had him in the top 20 on my big board, and they get him with the 19th pick in the second round. They get him within the top 20, but in the second round. And, I was worried they wouldn't get another receiver. They've always been like that. They kind of been getting the late round guys and just thought they were good at receiver, and the receiver unit's been pretty bad. Corey Davis starting to pick it up, needs to be more consistent. They get Humphreys, but hasn't been a guy that's been crazy consistent in his career, but a very good season last year. A.J. Brown, it's not a stretch if A.J. Brown's their best receiver in a year or two, so I love that pick. Nate Davis, about where he should have went. They needed a guard. Amani Hooker was a steal there. Thought he can go late second, early third. And he'll play in the slot for them. DeAndre Walker was another absolute steal. I thought could have went in the third, and he fits. There's a shortage on a bunch of 3-4 outside linebackers, but they managed to get a good one in the fifth here. In the sixth, they get David Long from West Virginia, who will be an inside linebacker for them. They have plenty of inside linebackers, but some free agents in the future, so retooling that. And I thought he could have went in the fifth, so they get him a round of a steal there. So some steals, some fits. They filled the needs. I like what they did a lot. No reaches on top of it. Titans were the number 3 draft, in my opinion. So we're on the top 2. If you're keeping track at home, the 2 teams that are left. We'll show you number 2. It's going to be the Baltimore Ravens for me. I love this draft. Marquise Brown was easily in the top, he was in the top 15 on my board. I think it's an excellent fit. Great fit with Lamar Jackson. It's going to be fun to watch those two. They trade back and still get him, and that was excellent. Another team, they had maybe the worst. The top 2 teams actually on this have the worst, in my opinion, the worst receiver units in football, so that's interesting. And they've always been hesitant to grab those good receivers, and they go grab Marquise Brown, so I really like that. And they grab Jalen. They need another pass rusher. Jalen Ferguson could have been a second rounder. They get him in really the late third, so that's very impressive. He can come in that rotation. Miles Boykin, so they grab another receiver and a totally different receiver, Marquise Brown, but that also can fit. Miles Boykin's a guy that can play down the sideline. He actually can play in the slot too for a bigger and speed receiver. So I absolutely love Marquise Brown and Miles Boykin, that pairing. Oh my God. Justice Hill, about where he should have went, but they've been lacking this type of running back here. So I really like the fit there for what they're going to do with Lamar Jackson. He fits that style offense. Ben Powers, about where he should have went. They needed a guard, though. He possibly could start at left guard for them. Amon Marshall, about where he should have went. A guy who can play corner or safety. Not a huge need, but a guy for the future. Dylan Mack was another steal. Thought he could have went third or fourth. They get him in the fifth. And then Trace McSorley, even though, I thought he would go seventh or undrafted, I think he fits this team. Robert Griffin's not going to be around forever as their backup. McSorley would be a good backup for this type of offense. So I love this draft. I'm glad they didn't overreact about losing Mosley because they had great depth at the position. So I love this draft. They filled the needs. They got steals. And then no reaches really here. So love that draft. But number 1 to me is the Washington Redskins. And there's multiple reasons. Well, we'll start at the top. Dwayne Haskins was their quarterback. They wanted to trade up. They didn't do it. Couldn't make a deal. They still get him at 15. So they save all these picks that they got steals of players on and still get their quarterback. They get Montez Sweat at pick 26. So because they didn't trade away picks with Dwayne Haskins, they were able to trade up and get Montez Sweat, who was my number 7 player in the draft. They lost Preston Smith, but it's okay because they got a better version in Montez Sweat, the athletic freak that already has production. He can reach crazy heights. This is an absolute ridiculous pick. Terry McLaurin III, about where he should go, but love the fit, love the need, Phil. And he's got Dwayne Haskins. That's his guy. So, it makes so much sense. They needed a receiver so bad, and they get a safe one, a guy that gets open, a guy that's familiar with the quarterback and the offense they're going to run. So I absolutely love that pick. The 4th round is what I didn't really love. Bryce Love's a great running back if healthy, but maybe a little early, taking into account that he has injuries. Wes Martin was a little early. So at this point, even though, it's tough. It's tough because their first 3 picks make it look like number 1 draft, and then maybe it brings it down a little bit because of the 2 4th-rounders, but it doesn't matter because the 5th round they get Ross Piercebacker. I thought could have went in the 4th, maybe even the 3rd. He can play center or guard for them. Look out for him playing guard. Cole Holcomb in the 5th. I love the fit here. He's going to be a weapon. He's going to move around from outside to inside linebacker. He can get that for the quarterback. He's a playmaker. He has a ton of speed, too, for that type of linebacker. Calvin Harmon, another absolute steal. He was a second-round grade for me, but I thought it was realistic he can go in the 3rd. I did not think it was realistic he would go really in the 5th. Would say early. If somebody said early 5th, I'd tell you you're out of your mind. They get him with the 33rd pick in the 6th. Jesus. 7th round, Jimmy Moreland, I thought could have been a 5th-round pick. He was constantly a playmaker cornerback, and they get him in the 7th. And then Jordan Brailford was one of my guys because he's a football player. He gets to the quarterback. We've seen him East-West Shrine game, getting the quarterback. Who is this guy? You know, Oklahoma. Then you start watching film. Oklahoma State didn't really use him right. He still had good production there. And then he gets to the Senior Bowl. He's doing it again. He's showing up. He's getting to the quarterback. You know, I liked him as a 4th or a 5th-round player. So Brailford's solid. You know, there's steals all over the place. There's great fits. Bottom line is this team got a lot better. This team got a lot better with their needs, with their fits. It doesn't matter who they lost in free agency, really, because of this draft. And another thing that's actually a really, really good thing. First off, I expect Haskins to start. But they do have Keenum, who was just in the NFC Championship a couple years ago, with good players around him. The Redskins went and did that. And if Keenum starts, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter which quarterback's starting because the talent you got around him now. And there was already some talent on that team. So I think they did a heck of a job here. Kind of surprised because right before we were getting the draft, it sounded like there was disagreement in the front office. The owner, Snyder's, is taking over. So very interesting. But maybe that was a good thing because they finally went out and got those receivers too. They got Terry McLaurin and Calvin Harmon. So I love this draft. I loved a lot of the other drafts, as you can see. So let me know your guys' thoughts. If you want to rank them, let me know who was your top tier teams, who was number 1. But again, we went more in depth each team by division in videos with a letter grade. So if you haven't seen those, go check them out. So we're gonna start getting into some NFL predictions for the year. We're gonna predict records, all kinds of stuff going forward. Also gonna cover the NBA draft. So a lot to get to still, so I appreciate everyone's support. Thanks for joining us. That's going to do it for this video. Goodbye.